Okay, so try to picture this. It's maybe the early 1950s. You're walking through a big European city square.
Right.
And suddenly there's this enormous truck, custom built. And on the back, a giant fin whale.
Not a model.
No, the actual preserved animal.
About.
Embalmed, just there. Driving from city to city for people to look at. It sounds completely bizarre, doesn't it?
Wildly so, yeah. And unsettling.
Absolutely. Welcome to the Deep Dive. You've sent us some fascinating material about this really strange historical episode from 1952.
Yeah, these embalmed fin whales that toured Europe and even went beyond, apparently.
For nearly 20 years as these kinds of traveling exhibitions.
It honestly sounds like fiction, but the sources you've provided, they lay it all out. It's quite a slice of history.
It really is a reminder of how different things were not even that long ago.
Definitely.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to unpack this whole strange story. We want to look at the world these itinerant whales, as they're called, traveled through.
Understand how they were even, captured and preserved. That alone sounds incredible.
Right, and what happened to them in the end. And maybe reflect a bit on what this tells us about, how our attitudes towards nature have changed. Or hopefully changed.
And the animal itself. The fin whale, Balænoptera physalis. I mean, it's the second largest animal on Earth.
Just massive.
To think of subjecting something like that to this kind of treatment, it's quite something.
So let's start with the context. The 1950s. How could something like this even happen? What was going on?
Well, the sources point pretty clearly to a very different mindset back then. Respect for wildlife, especially big marine animals, it just wasn't the same as today. Not at all.
Animals were seen more as resources. Or entertainment.
Exactly. Either through an economic lens, what can we get from them, or just as curiosities. Things to be exploited for profit or a show.
So conservation wasn't really part of the equation then?
Not in the way we think of it now. Public curiosity about exotic things, huge things, was really high. And, people were quick to cash in on that.
Practices that seem, frankly, appalling today were just normal.
Kind of part of the landscape, yeah. Acceptable back then.
And there was a specific reason behind these whales, wasn't there? It wasn't just some random showman.
That's key, yes. The sources say the explicit goal here was actually to promote the Norwegian whaling industry.
Ah.
It was apparently in decline, and these whales, these dead giants, were basically used as marketing tools.
Wow. Using the very animal they hunted to drum up more business for hunting them.
There's a definite dark irony there, isn't there?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the whales.
Yeah.
The sources name them Hercolis, or sometimes Hercules, Golias, and Jonas. What were they like?
Huge.
Yeah.
Fin whales. We're talking, up to 25 meters long.
Yeah.
Maybe over 80 tons.
Just try to imagine that scale. A living creature that big in the ocean.
Dense.
And then this preservation process. How on earth do you turn an 80-ton whale into something that can travel on a truck for years?
The process described, it's pretty intensive. And kind of grim, honestly.
I bet.
So first, captured by the whalers, killed. Then all the blood drained out, all the internal organs removed.
So basically hollowed out.
Completely hollowed out, left this enormous cavity inside.
Okay, but that still leaves tons of tissue. How did they stop it all from just decomposing?
Chemicals. Lots of chemicals. The sources mention soaking the bodies in formalin.
Right, formalin.
And a whole cocktail of other preserving substances, trying to keep the tissues intact.
But soaking something that massive, could that really work long-term, especially being moved around? Seems difficult.
Well, that's where the sort of technical side comes in. They actually installed refrigeration systems inside the whales.
Inside? You're kidding?
No, built right into the hollow body cavity, like a custom cooling unit inside the carcass itself.
Good grief.
To constantly chill it from the inside out, kind of slow down that decomposition process while it was on the road.
Gold-grained, chemically treated, and given internal air conditioning. Wow.
Pretty much, yeah. And then hoisted onto these huge, specially built refrigerated trucks designed to handle the weight and size for long-haul travel.
Across countries, right?
Across Europe.
Which brings us to the spectacle itself. You said it went on for about 20 years.
Yeah, 2 decades. It's hard to believe.
Visiting dozens of cities.
France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, Spain. Loads of places. It wasn't just a brief fad. It was a long-running thing.
What was it like for the people who saw it? It must have been unlike anything else.
Oh, it was hugely popular. You have to remember, seeing a whale, any whale, was incredibly rare for most people, especially away from the coast.
True.
So bringing this giant from the sea right into the middle of town. That was a massive draw. People pay tickets.
Just to get close.
Just to get close, yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, the sources say sometimes they can even go inside.
Inside the whale? Seriously?
Yeah. Walk through the hollowed-out body. Imagine walking between those enormous ribs.
That is hard to picture. What was that like? Did the sources describe it?
Well, dark, obviously. And the smell. That's where the reality probably hit.
Uh-oh.
A strong smell, described as a mix of the preserving chemicals, the formalin, and, inevitably, some partial decomposition.
Right. The refrigeration probably couldn't stop everything.
Exactly. So you've got this weird mix. The awe of the size, the darkness, the chemical smell, this underlying hint of decay.
And how did they sell this experience? How was it marketed?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. Despite being, a chemically treated, internally refrigerated carcass, it was heavily promoted as educational.
Educational.
And scientific.
Yeah.
Framed as this great opportunity for people to learn about whales.
Learn about whales by walking through a preserved, slightly decomposing one filled with chemicals and cooling pipes.
Seems like it. The learning was basically just seeing this dead specimen, which was primarily there for commercial reasons and to promote the whaling industry.
That educational label feels particularly odd, given the reality.
It really highlights how different the approach was, doesn't it? More about the spectacle, the access, than maybe genuine understanding or respect for the living animal.
So 20 years on the road, what eventually happened to them? Hercolis, Golias, Jonas? Did they just fall apart?
They had different fates, according to the sources. Golias, for instance, seems to have last been seen in Italy.
And
the trail goes a bit cold. It's believed it just degraded too much, became unusable as an exhibit.
Okay. What about Hercolis, or Hercules?
That one had a longer and maybe even stranger run. It was exhibited longer, definitely. At one point, it even became part of a circus act in Spain.
A circus act. With a whale.
Apparently so. But eventually time caught up with it too. Decomposition got too bad. And Hercules was eventually incinerated.
Incinerated. Wow. From touring star to circus performer to ashes. And Jonas, the third one.
Jonas had a different journey. That's the one that crossed the Atlantic. Went to New York.
To America.
Yeah. Now, the details here get a bit hazy, the sources say. It was supposedly put into storage under controlled conditions after its tour. And there's this claim, though it sounds a bit uncertain, that Jonas might actually still exist somewhere today. In good condition.
Really? Like preserved somewhere in storage?
That's the rumor, but it's poorly documented. Kind of a weird, lingering mystery.
So one probably decayed to nothing, one burned, one maybe still exists in a warehouse somewhere.
That seems to be the summary. A strange end to a very strange story.
It really is. And looking back now, the whole idea, trucking an embalmed whale around Europe, it just seems so incredibly alien.
And disturbing, frankly, from our perspective today.
It really highlights how much things have changed, doesn't it? Our whole view of wildlife. I mean, the fin whale is protected now in many places.
It is, thankfully. That's a huge positive shift. But the sources also remind us, they still face threats.
Right. It's not like everything's fine now.
No. Things like accidental fishing gear, entanglement, collisions with ships. These are serious modern dangers. And the big one, climate change impacting their ocean environment.
So the threat changed from direct exploitation for display
to these less direct, but still really significant impacts of human activity.
Yeah. This story, Hercolis, Golias, Jonas, it's such a vivid example of how we used to treat these incredible creatures.
Not with reverence, really. More as resources to exploit or novelties for profit.
And knowing this history, even though it's uncomfortable, it's important, isn't it?
Absolutely. Helps us see how far we've come, and maybe helps ensure we don't slide back towards that kind of thinking.
It's fundamental, really. Respect for marine life, for all life.
Yeah, okay.
It's not just about the environment. It reflects on us, on our ethics as a society.
And this story just captures that shift in the most bizarre way imaginable.
A powerful example, yeah. Deeply strange, but powerful. So we've taken this deep dive into the just absolutely wild history of these itinerant embalmed fin whales, a story that really does serve as a stark illustration of how dramatically views on wildlife and conservation have changed.
Thankfully changed, moving away from that kind of overt exploitation.
It's a chapter that reminds us, how far we've come in recognizing the value of these animals.
But also that their challenges today, while maybe different, are still very real.
Definitely. And maybe here's something for you, the listener, to think about as you go about your day. Consider how these traveling whale shows were presented. They were called educational and scientific.
Right, despite being commercial spectacles built on, well, a dead animal.
Exactly. So what does that contradiction tell us about the complex, sometimes messy ways we've tried to learn about and interact with the natural world, both back then and maybe even now? Something to mull over.